Well, Debi'd gone for what I thought was a routine checkup, and I was going to pick up children at school, and then I got this phone call saying, Mom, I'm in hospital, I've got leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, and they've given me just a couple of weeks to live. And I think it was any mother's worst nightmare.
When they said to me it's leukemia, my first question was, is it acute or is it chronic? Because in my mind, chronic was something that was slower, less aggressive, and you begin to clutch onto any hope that it just can't be the worst. And the neurologist made it very clear, this is serious and I wouldn't be going home, and it was acute myeloid leukemia. When I arrived at Constantiaberg Hospital to meet Professor Jacobs, he was brutally honest, and when I asked to go home quickly to bath my children, he said, Mrs. Scaling, you have less than 2 weeks to live if we don't start treatment straight away. The next phase was further blood tests, bone marrow biopsy and a lumbar puncture, just to ensure that the leukemia hadn't spread into my central nervous system. The results of that weren't positive. The type of acute leukemia was not an easy one to cure, and on top of that, the leukemia had spread to my brain and to my spine, which would entail intensive chemotherapy through lumbar punctures. I think the shock for me of knowing that this was going to be my journey, I began to think about my family, in particular my children. They were so little, and immediately and instinctively I knew this was something I had to fight and I had to survive, that I couldn't be a victim, that as shocking as it was, this was a part of my journey. Throughout the journey, I think I made people laugh. We joked a lot. We had to find the humor in it. There's nothing humorous about losing your hair, but my friends convinced me I looked like Sinead O'Connor. I think the hardest part was going home and having been taught for a month and a half what to look out for and what not to do and what not to eat. Suddenly I was exposed to the outside world after being protected for such a long time, and fear just overwhelmed me. And in fact, I don't think I wanted to go home. I just wanted to stay in a place where those that understood were around me. They asked me not to hug my children, not to kiss my children, certainly not to spend time in their beds, lying with them. And I had every intention to do that. But on the very first night I was home, I went to say goodnight to my son, and he put up his little arms and he could barely talk, and he said, Mom, you are gorgeous. And that was me in his bed, lying with him, my arms around him, and I knew that they needed that love and that together we would survive this journey. I think after having waited so long for a donor, it was just something that was no longer a reality for me. It was as though perhaps it wasn't meant to be. We'd had so many potential matches, and then at the last minute they would do a finer test, and Prof would come to my room and say, I'm so sorry, it's not perfect, and I can't take the risk of transplanting you unless it's a perfect match. So by the time I'd been home for 4 months, I think a transplant and a potential donor was such an unrealistic hope for me, and I began to just think, well, as long as I was in remission, I need to live my life to the fullest. When the call came to say that they'd found an American donor, I think it was a mixed emotion of, finally, this is so exciting, I have a chance at a long life. But I also was acutely aware of the short-term risk of going back into the unit and the risks of an unrelated donor. In the morning I eventually packed up to leave. My daughter Maxine took off school and really just followed me around, and she was a real old soul, took everything as maturely as she could. But at the last minute she sat on my suitcase and said, Mom, I don't want you to go. I just wanted to stay and I wanted to be a mom, but I knew that if they were going to have me when they needed me as young adults, this is something I had to do. The hard part was never knowing whether I would survive, so I couldn't assure my children that it was going to be fine. I just tried to enjoy the moments we had together and to make sure that they saw me at my very best. The medical team were incredible. In the transplant unit, they surround you, they support you, they go through this journey with you. Obviously, anyone that knows the journey of a transplant, the real difficult stage was after the transplant, when my body took a real knock, and mouth sores and diarrhea and lack of sleep, and it was just a very, very hard journey, and at times I really felt that it was possibly the end for me. I had a wonderful GP at the time, and she drew me an incredible picture of myself, my school, my children, the procedure, and that was just something very special for me. And she eventually said, Debbie, we need to get you out of hospital and nurse you from home, because this place, you've been here too long and it's not good for you. I wasn't there for my daughter when she started school. I was ill at the time, and she was brave, and one day she came to me and said that I consider the responsibility of having children. And I said, why? And she said, Mom, you have not done my homework or packed my lunchbox since I started big school. And I don't know if that was a turning point for me, but I do know that it was after that, that day by day I began to feel a little bit stronger. And then I looked back one day and I realized I was walking and I was gaining muscle, and my life was starting to normalize. There were so many highlights in my life. I remember the cycling team that had been put together called the Miles for Marrow team, who were cycling for cancer awareness. For my 40th birthday, they bought me a ticket to fly to Johannesburg in South Africa to meet Lance Armstrong. And at that stage, he was certainly a hero of mine. When I first matriculated at our school, Elkanah House, I think there were 18 of them then. They did so well, and that was also, it had been a journey for us, and finally to see our first guinea pigs coming through and excelling, and some of them coming in the top 5% in the country, that was special. If it hadn't been for my family, for my amazing mother, for my sister and her 3 girls, they just stepped up in every way and looked after my children. I think my children were loved and spoilt and really protected from the seriousness of what was happening in our family.
I don't remember the ±2 years that my mum was sick as one continuous memory of her in our hospital. I just remember select moments and days from that time, and one of the earliest ones was when she first went to hospital. We weren't really sure what was going on, but we weren't allowed to go see her because she was in some kind of ICU, but we could see her through a glass. And then my cousin came over and we made her a mobile from shells on the beach, because we lived by the beach, and her hospital was a bit inland, so we thought, how can we make her feel connected to home, and show her that we miss her. So we made her this mobile, and it was quite long. It was looked like a chandelier actually. And then we went and we hung it outside her window, and it was quite sad because we couldn't actually talk to her because the glass was so thick. Something we liked to do is when we knew she was coming home, we'd make a banner that said "Welcome home, Mom," and put it up in the foyer. And it would take us hours of colouring in and sticking pieces of paper together to make something big enough to be a banner. I think it sounds so silly, but one of the hardest things that I really struggled with being 6 years old was learning to do my own hair. My mum being sick definitely made us grow up, because little things like that seemed so insignificant became things that I had to do on my own if I wanted them done the way I wanted them done. And so the whole experience definitely made us grow up and mature a bit more. I think now that I'm older, my mom is my best friend. She's the person that I tell everything first and that I trust the most in this world, because obviously moms are the one person that truly has your back for life. And I don't want to think about what it would be like if I didn't have her now, because she's such a rock in my life. I think I would be not even half the person I am. And I always think that if I grow up to be just a little bit like she is, I would have succeeded at something.
I feel like she's just always been there for us. If we need to talk to her or if we need something, she's always been willing to help, because she wouldn't be here if she wasn't cured. And now that she is, I feel like my mom always wants to help, and she wants to make memories and appreciate life, because most parents, they have their kids, they have responsibilities, and that's the stuff they do. But I feel like when my mom does stuff for us, it's because that's what she wants to do. She wants to experience those things with us, and she wants us to do well, to see us live a life and fulfill it, because hers was almost taken away from her, and I feel like it was given back as a gift, and now she makes the most of that.
I kept saying to myself, what kind of person would be willing to donate their marrow for somebody they don't know? And so an important thing for me was to be able to thank her. And when the registry said to me, unfortunately, you don't get to contact your donors, it was disappointing for me. And I began to understand why, and in the event of me not surviving, But when I recontacted them a couple of weeks ago, they told me the rules had changed, and in fact I could meet my donor. And that was just so exciting for me. But how does one thank somebody that's given so much for someone they don't know? How would I feel about meeting her? I think it would be one of the most precious moments of my life.